There are no more public hearings or private depositions on the calendar for now, and lawmakers are leaving tonight for Thanksgiving break. So what is next in the impeachment? NBC's Geoff Bennett takes a look ahead.
Hey, Allison. So here's what to expect next in the Trump impeachment inquiry. This hearing today with Fiona Hill and David Holmes, we expect, will be the last public hearing held by the House Intelligence Committee. This committee has announced no more public hearings, no more closed-door depositions for the following week. In fact, members of Congress leave tonight for the Thanksgiving break. They come back the week of December 3rd. So we expect that next week, what they'll do, the House Intelligence Committee will take all of the evidence, all of the testimony that they've been hearing for really the last 3 months and sew it all together in one big, tapestry of evidence that they're going to use to prove this case, to make the case for impeachment. They'll write a report. They'll hand that report off to the House Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee, if they choose to, they could hold public hearings of their own, except in that case what they would do is call up constitutional experts, they'd call in historians, they wouldn't have firsthand fact witnesses, the kind of which you've seen the House Intelligence Committee bring forward. At a certain point, the Judiciary Committee would draft articles of impeachment. That committee would then vote on the articles of impeachment before sending it to the House floor. The House floor would then have to vote on those articles of impeachment. Because Democrats control the House, we expect that Democrats would pass them off the House floor over to the Senate. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has made clear that even though he's a Republican, even though he doesn't support impeachment, because he and the president obviously share the same party, that the Constitution makes clear that he has to hold a trial. The question is, how long would that trial be? We don't know. We do know that the Constitution makes clear that it's a 6-day-a-week hearing. It would likely start somewhere in the 12 o'clock hour and go into the night. The Clinton impeachment hearing lasted somewhere between 5 and 6 weeks. It's not clear at all First of all, it's not clear if there will be a Senate trial. The House, of course, has to vote. But if there is, it's not clear how long the Senate trial would last. The big wild card in all of this is the 2020 election. You have a number of Democratic senators who would much rather be in Iowa, would much rather be in New Hampshire, those senators running for president, who, if there is a Senate trial, would be stuck here in Washington having to participate in that. So that is sort of a quick thumbnail sketch of how this whole process moves forward, with the caveat being, of course, that House Democrats have to make the determination that they will, in fact, move forward on impeachment. Right now, it seems as if they will. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi has made clear that what President Trump has already admitted to is in itself impeachable. Democrats have already expended a metric ton of political capital in getting to this point, but no one wants to make any guarantees at this point.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.